Islam. Okay, so we're gonna begin. Carter, welcome. Glad you're here. Aubrey, you're family, and Sean, you're more than family. So good to see you guys all here. Glad you're here. Now, Carter and Aubrey, I kind of know you, but Carter, I'm meeting you for the first time. We're just gonna dive in.
Okay.
So if this is like way over your head, my apologies in advance.
It's okay.
If it's not, like, feel free to engage and let us know if you have any questions or whatever. We're going to aim to end around 8:30. We are on the 8th week of an 8 session. Went over like, 3 months or 3.5 months or something. But 8 sessions, and specifically we were reviewing or exploring the topic of Islam. Basically because we're just seeing it so prevalent in our culture. And it's on the news and all those kinds of things. And it really has challenged us, kind of like not just how much of Islam do we know, but also how much of our own faith do we know, right? So it's really kicked up a lot of things. So I want you to follow along in your sheets. Hopefully you have those here. I want to try to go quickly through the first 1, 2, 3, 4 sheets, landing on the 5th sheet, which was the promise, because I wanted to give you some practical things to take away from the whole course. If you don't remember anything else, because maybe you don't remember anything else, totally fine, but hopefully you remember some of this stuff. So I would love for a couple of people to read out these scriptures that we have, sort of our biblical response. Right? So just kind of like, well, where are we putting this? Are we angry? Are we intimidated? Are we lost? Are we confused? No, hopefully none of those, right? Hopefully we're regulated, we're confident in our faith, we are sure of our salvation, and and we're just trying to bring that into whatever circle we exist in. And so these are some biblical references, should I say, about our response to something that we see or something that we're encountering, like the Islamic faith. Okay, so let's dive in. Can somebody read that first one? If you don't like reading, read early, because the big one is at the end.
I'll go first.
Okay, Chelsea, hit us.
Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
Thank you for reading that. What do we think? Why are we reading that? How does that fit with our perspective? What's that?
It's not our fight to fight. We surrender to God, and it's his battle.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
My perspective.
Sure. Okay. Somebody else? What are your thoughts? You're right into it, eh? I love that. That's pretty good. Okay. Anyone else? Hot crowd. Here's a way I heard that. Oh, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think it's like not so much about like physical fighting,
Sure.
more like a spiritual fight.
Yeah.
If it's in like the context of Islam, we shouldn't really be like fighting Islam physically or spiritually.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. It should be, fighting spiritually, less physically. Okay, and I love that. The way I heard sort of this concept explained was, if it has skin on, it's not the enemy. If it has skin, it's not the enemy. And oftentimes we vilify people who have a belief system or an ideology that's different from ours, but they aren't the enemy. We believe, we'll see it in a second, we believe they're blinded by the enemy to sort of, have the belief system that they do, right? So we're not about trying to oppose them physically, which is kind of showing what you said. Okay, 2 Corinthians 4:4.
The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers, so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is in the image of God.
Okay, so this is this is really our concept of how we kind of deduce what Islam actually is. You could throw in there a number of the other cults, right? Jehovah's Witnesses or Latter-day Saints or those kinds of, they have a belief system. They have a set of beliefs, but they're blinded by the complete truth. So it's like Satan has given them so much, but won't let them, go all the way or have the complete truth revealed, right? So again, if we go back to our struggle's not against flesh and blood, it's kind of like asking a blind person to drive your car for you. Hey, I'm going to drop my car off. Can you drive it back to my place? It's like, well, I can't because I'm blind. So is it his problem? Is it his fault? Should we go to war over that? No, but he just can't do it. Okay? Let's read 2 Corinthians 11:14.
And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light.
Keep going.
Yeah, it is not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve.
Okay. So again, a beautiful explanation. And in fact, this is a great description of the way that Allah describes himself.
Like a chameleon, you can just change it.
Exactly, right? So the Christian description of Satan overlays with the Islamic description of Allah and so forth, and the angels and stuff. And then so it drops down, verse 15, that the servants will also be like this too. And again, if you go back to 2 Corinthians 4:4, it might not be of their choosing, but essentially they're in this masquerade as well. And there's a little bit of grace in that last sentence. Their end will be what their actions deserve, right? And it doesn't say their end will be what their beliefs are. Their end will be what their actions deserve. And so sometimes we see people who are of the Islamic faith and they're just great people. Well, again, I'm not God, so I can't really make the judgment call. But maybe this verse allows them an opening to kind of like, well, I didn't do anything wrong to anybody. I lived, the best I could and tried to help people the best I could and that kind of thing. And so maybe there's a little bit there, even though Satan himself is the one masquerading as an angel of light. Chelsea.
If someone were to ask me, does God believe in eye for an eye?
Okay.
How would I answer that?
Beautiful. That's a great question.
I don't know how to respond to that right now.
Okay.
I'd be like, no, he'd make the best of it, but
Okay.
it would be a good way of answering.
So, so I mean, it's Old Testament, New Testament, right? And the beauty of this question is that Jesus literally talked about this exact thing, right? And so I think what you're doing is you're dialing back to maybe the Islamic ideology of, we got to take matters into our own hands. In fact, they believe that they're punishing an unbeliever is actually the judgment of God, and they are deputized to do that. So a lot of times you'll see people, they will commit acts of violence, and they're like, well, we are God's vessel of judgment here on this earth, right? And so it's like, well, then we got to get them. I mean, we're seeing all of that play out right now in Israel, even to this day. However, this is all from the Bible, right? And this is the Mosaic Law, right? I can't quote you a chapter and verse, but it's the Mosaic Law. And it was the Mosaic Law until Jesus preached a message called the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And so he says, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? But I say to you, if you have hate in your heart for somebody else, you've killed them already. So he kind of like raised the standard, but basically just said, if we go eye for eye, then everybody in the world's just going to be blind and toothless. So let's not do that anymore. Let's actually look at the intents of our heart and have love for, right? So he didn't abolish the law, but the law led us to the place where we are today, where it's love that kind of trumps. Okay. Okay, second, let's move into this next part, Matthew 7:15. Anybody want to read that?
Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire.
Okay, beautiful. So again, there's two thoughts here that I have. Throw it out there. Maybe you guys have some thoughts here. Number one is people always ask, was Muhammad mentioned in the Bible? Right? And my thought is, yeah, right there. He's like, to me, he's a false prophet. And we did a whole week on the character of Muhammad. Not a good dude. Not a good dude at all. In fact, the worst of the worst. But he was a prophet. And he's called a prophet. And so in my mind, he would be a false prophet. So Jesus is warning us 700 years earlier, saying, hey, watch out for these guys. They're going to come along. And even in the last 200 years, we've seen all these cults arise and all this stuff. So we have to be on our guard for that. Come to you in sheep's clothing, inwardly they're ferocious wolves. But then again, kind of like that 2 Corinthians 11:14, where their end will be what their actions deserve, the same thing Jesus says here. By their fruit you will recognize them. Right? Not by their belief system or those kinds of things. It's what they do, what actions they do. And a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. So you see kind of the heart of the matter in this. Okay? Anybody else? Thoughts on that one?
Well, I think it was kind of like the ideology today is that, where the worldview is starting to think about, what's right. Well, whatever's right for me must be right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sort of turned everything from good to evil.
Yep.
So they call good evil, and they call evil good.
Right.
So
Yep.
there's no sort of differentiation between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. They're no longer opposites. It's whatever you think is good or whatever you think is evil. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Absolutely. Yep. And Isaiah says that very thing. There will come a day when evil's called good and good's called evil and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Your prayer of approach.
A prayer of approach, yeah.
I'm watching the video.
Okay.
It reminds me of this because you have to ask for him to prune you, right?
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So, if you are not afraid of the gardener, then you step into that. You go, hey, here I am. And the gardener's like, oh, okay, well, if you're offering yourself up, here are a few things I got an issue with. Okay, anyone want another comment? Vince? Who wants to read John 10:10?
I like this one, John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full.
Okay,
Scary stuff.
so this is Jesus talking. He's actually talking about being a good shepherd. And he says there's a thief that comes, and this is how you'll know the thief. He steals, kills, and destroys. But in my people who have life in me will have a full life. They'll have some answers to their questions. They'll have, they'll have me involved in the power of who I am. Any thoughts on this?
That's why we all recite the Lord is my shepherd, right?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly, I don't know if you guys were following the news today at all, but or maybe the yesterday as well. When October 7th happened, there was a number of tragedies that happened. A lot of them were caught on video. I don't know how deep of a dive you did on all of that. I did a little bit of a deep dive, a lot of a deep dive. And there was video footage of a mother, probably in her 30s. I kind of related to her a little bit because she was a redhead. And she had an infant baby, probably 4 or 5 months old, and a toddler. And Hamas had come and surrounded her and surrounded the house. Her husband was gone. He actually was captured as well. But Hamas had come around, and she was bewildered. You could just see her just lost because she was terrified. And she's holding her baby, and she's got her other baby, and she's got a blanket around, and they're taking her away. She was one of the hostages that was taken away. And then today, or yesterday I guess it was, as Hamas has been releasing all these hostages, they're now releasing the bodies. Well, these 3 were amongst the bodies that were released. And so, so it just gets you. And they kind of paraded out the coffins of the mom and the two babies, and they have a whole gang of people, and everybody's like kind of cheering and singing, and like the whole, it's kind of grotesque, right? And so, yeah, I didn't watch all of that. I don't think my nervous system could take that at this point. But fast forward to a video that came up on my feed, and it was a guy who was in Israel and who is a Jewish person, and he showed some of the video, but then he said, so explain to me what the motive is here. Explain to me what drives people to do something like this, right? And of course it's rhetorical, because you're just kind of like, well, you know, dude, sorry, I can't help you, and I can't empathize with you because I'm not a Jew and I'm not living in Israel at the time, and yada yada yada. The other part behind the story was the man was told that his family was coming home to him, but they knew well and good that they were already dead. And then they also had the coffins locked and then gave them keys, but the keys that they got them they gave them were the wrong keys. So it's just like really kind of sadistic. And so I commented on his video, and I just said, this is demonic. 100% it's demonic. October 7th was demonic. People are demon possessed, and they're doing all of these heinous things. That's the only explanation that I can provide. And then I quoted this verse, and I said, and I didn't quote the back half, but I just quoted the first part, and I said, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so again, if you're going to judge things by their fruit, you're like, okay, well, that is a work of the enemy. Stealing, killing, and destroying. So, anyways, there you have it. Okay, let me read this last one. So Matthew 24:4 to 11, and then 24. This is Jesus responding to his disciples that say, what's it going to be like at the end of times? And Jesus answered, he said, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I'm the Messiah, and will deceive many. Everybody say many.
Many.
Sometimes they think, oh, people are duped, are the minority, but no, this is the majority. You'll hear of wars, rumors of wars, but see to it you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. So I don't know if you've ever kind of thought about the difference there. What's the difference between a kingdom and a nation, right? Aubrey, you got a thought? Okay. So like nations are one thing, but kingdoms, I think, are more of a spiritual, right? Spiritual strata. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over, persecuted, put to death. You'll be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many people will turn away from their faith, betray and hate each other. Many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. And then again, false prophets is verse 24. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear, perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I've told you ahead of time. Okay, so that's just kind of a biblical foundation. Kind of how we're going to approach it, but also just the kind of level of stuff that we're dealing with from the lips of Jesus. So Jesus is like, guys, I'm warning you, all this stuff's coming down the pipe. So just letting you know, like even till the end times, from now until then, and literally from now until then, all kinds of people have, deceived people. I mean, they're saying that, Islam is up to around 2 billion people in the world, so I would consider that a lot of people. Okay, so here's what I want to do. We're going to track back, because it's been a couple of weeks since we went through the Christian side of this. So we did this, Carter, in 2 parts, and I'll give you a bit of a review as well. 2 parts. Part 1 was, if you are talking to a Muslim person and they're going to challenge you on your faith, there's 3 things, predominantly, or of the top 5, here are 3. And these are the things they're going to challenge you on. So that was our first 3 sessions. Then the second 3 sessions are things that you could actually challenge somebody from the Islamic faith. You could challenge them on those 3 things. So we're not going to cover those back 3 things. Those are the last 3 weeks. But what we're going to do is a review of the first 3 things, where somebody from an Islamic faith might come to us and say, Here are some things you might want to consider or that we should talk about. Okay, so just jump in here. I'm going to go pretty speedily through this because I want to get to the end. So the first thing that a person of the Islamic faith is going to do is they're going to say, I don't believe in Jesus. He's a good prophet, but Jesus isn't God because he never claimed to be God. Okay, Jesus never claimed to be God. So I went a little crazy this week. I'm not going to read through all those scriptures, but all of those scriptures are in one way or another Jesus saying he's God, or saying he's like God, or saying you can compare him to God, or he does things that only a God-type person could do. Somebody with supernatural powers could actually do. So you can look all of those up. Great, just lots of powerful stuff. I particularly love Mark 14, 55 to 64. Also, John 10, 22 to 23. This is where they say, where it's the leaders, the religious leaders, literally say to him, because they get mad at him. He's like, why are you mad at me? And they go, because you, a mere man, are claiming to be God. So he doesn't say those words outright, but they know exactly what he means. And then Mark 15, 55 to 64. This is when he's right in front of Pilate. And Pilate's like, come on, man, I want to let you go, but this is the claim they're making. Will you kind of help us out here? So Jesus actually shrouds this again, doesn't outrightly say it, but does outrightly say it, because you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of glory was a prophecy that Daniel prophesied about the Messiah 700 years earlier, and that's what Jesus quotes. So Pilate's sitting there going, I don't even know what you're talking about, bro. But all the religious leaders were like, oh, he just claimed to be God, because he's claiming to be the fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel 7. And then also we have Luke 14 to 16, where this is where Jesus, the beginning of his ministry, he gets up in church and they hand him the scroll, and he gets up there and he turns himself to the passage, and there is a promise in Isaiah about the coming one who will open blinded eyes and set the captives free, and yada, yada, yada. And Jesus gets up and he goes, here's the reading, and the fulfillment of this is right now. And they are furious. They're like, how dare you say this in church yet? And then he runs outside, and they run to get him, and they're going to push him over the cliff, and then he escapes. So, anyways, there's some pretty significant things there. Jesus also does these I am statements recorded by John, which, of course, when Moses says, who should I say sent me? When he's delivering his people, he says, say, I am that I am sent you. And so Jesus is like, well, I'll use that because I'm God. So I am, the bread of life, the light of the world, the gate, the good shepherd, the resurrection of life, the way, the truth, the life, and the true vine. These are audacious claims. When you say, if I ever said, I'm the way, Sean, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life, you'd be like, yeah, you're just a dude, man. I'm not buying that at all.
I saw a video of a Muslim
Yep.
Christian debating,
Okay.
and they quoted something Jesus said that he's the way or something, that he's the only way.
Okay.
And the Christian said, the Muslim was like, well, that doesn't mean he's God. He's like, well, if that doesn't mean he's God, then why don't you say it? He's like, well, I'm not going to say it.
Beautiful. I love that. That's powerful.
Right.
Yeah. Excuse me. Okay.
I just looked that one up, 55 to 60. That's a good one, full one to read.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Also, in the Hebrew language, doesn't the word "I am" doesn't those words in the Hebrew language doesn't that translate to God's proper name? Or am I mistaken on that?
You got me on that one. Not really
That's
sure.
I know the concept, but I'm not sure how it applies.
Yeah, we could look that up.
I think it's where Moses asked God, so who do you say that is going to deliver you, sort of thing? Do you say, I am?
Mm-hmm.
Does he say, I am? So he's declaring himself, the name I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Yahweh or Jehovah or Adonai or any of those things, but what it does mean is I'm the self-sufficient one. And I exist outside of everything. That's kind of the inference, and then so Jesus is inferring that too. But yeah, but that's really, that'd be worth digging into. Okay, B is, Jesus was worshipped and he accepted worship. So all the way from his birth, Matthew 2:11, that's when the wise men came and worshipped him, all the way to Revelation, when they say, who's worthy to open this scroll? And they're like, there's nobody worthy except for the Lamb that was slain, who is Jesus, right? So, and then Jesus comes into the fore, and then he opens the scroll. So he wouldn't open the scroll and receive the worship if he wasn't worthy. So everything there. And then Jesus performed many signs and wonders. There's this thing in Jewish tradition that they'll know the Messiah by way of his miracles. And some traditions have 4, some traditions have 5. And I can't remember them all, but healing a man born blind, raising somebody from the dead, there's a few of them. And so they go, those would be the ones that only God could do. Like if somebody was like struck blind and you healed them, it'd be like, well, he already did have his sight, so maybe you just jarred something loose. But if somebody was dead 3 days as well, so Lazarus, right, he waited 3 days. Anyway, so he performed many signs and wonders.
He performed all those things, and the Pharisees at some point decided this has to be true. We can't.
Well, yeah, they unfortunately the Pharisees and the religious leaders had so much to lose they didn't get on board that train, but it was right there for them. Right? They go to the guy in John 9 and they say, tell us, man, like what happened? And he's like, I don't know. All I know is I was once blind and now I see. And they're like, So anyways, yeah, lots of stuff there. Jesus' teachings, like our culture is built on Chelsea, that passage, Matthew 5-7, all of those things are all about turn the other cheek and all that stuff, right? So he taught like God. He taught like God. We're still trying to figure out what he told us. And then here's the big one. His brothers believed he was God. So again, Sean, if I was trying to convince you that I was God by saying I'm the way, the truth, and the life, that'd be a challenge. But your brothers and sisters, people in your household, the ones that you hear pass wind and the one that you hear belch at the table and the ones that, you've seen them fail exams and, have all these problems and stuff, and they turn around and go, hey, by the way, I'm God. You'd be like, I don't think you're God. I think you're delusional. But here for James and Jude, they start their letters by saying, I'm not even a brother, I'm a bondservant of Jesus. And then they write their books. Say again?
At first, they didn't believe him.
No, that's right. So yeah, but still that convincing, pretty tough. Okay, so that's the first thing they're going to say. Jesus never claimed to be God. Well, there's 5 things right there that you could kind of go back on or even just be confident that that Jesus is God, right? Because if they challenge you, sometimes you'll be like, well, maybe he wasn't God. But here's just 5 things. So we covered that week 1, or week 2, I guess it was. Week 3, we covered this topic, which is amazing. They will say the Bible has been changed and corrupted. The Bible has been changed and corrupted over the years. So again, we went through this pretty dramatically. We also went through this during our Alpha course. Letter A, the reliability and the accuracy and the relevancy of the Bible is very sound based on the internal consistency. So our Bible is written by 40 different people over 1,500 years on 3 continents, 3 different languages. You have everything from shepherds to fishermen to kings to judges to religious leaders. And all of those people somehow wrote a book that works.
Not like the Quran.
Well, the Quran's different.
I know, that's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they will say, well, yeah, it's written by all these people. And I'm like, yeah. If I'm in a car and we're going to dinner and there's 4 of us, well, I want to go to this. I want to go here. We can't even decide on the time of day. You know what I mean? Let alone have 40 people from 1,500 years agree and all talk and say the same thing. It is a miracle that happened. So internally it's consistent. Externally it's consistent. Archaeology, history, none of those things have ever disproved anything in the Bible.
Which is important to state.
It's crazy. And the more they dig through stuff, the more they, like when they excavated Babylon, they were like, oh oh, this is in the Bible. Like if you read, again, this is a side note, but Daniel 5, they talk about, I'm going to forget his name, but they say Belshazzar was the king of Babylon. And for years they said, well, this disproves Daniel was accurate because it wasn't Belshazzar, it was another king. And then, anyways, they dig through Babylon and they, do the archaeological dig. And they find out that the king, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was actually in another land, and the person he deputized was Belshazzar. And it was proven that the other king was not there. But when Daniel says, oh, this was the king, he was the king at that time because he had been given that authority. And here's the part that'll put chills up your back of your spine. Only an eyewitness would have known what happened on that night. And so archaeology actually proves the authenticity of the Bible, those external sources. Number 3 is it matches human experience and has the ring of truth. So this is, again, sort of more of an ethereal thing, but when you live by the principles in the Bible, things generally go well. They say people who go to church live longer, have happier lives, happier marriages, more successful, yada, yada. And then we talked about this, the teachings of Jesus are revolutionary and what Western civilization has been built on. Okay, anybody want to jump in? I'm just rolling through. Okay, so textual criticism. This is a science that challenges the reliability of documents, not just the Bible, but the Bible's included in this. And the Bible is proven, and I might actually be low on this. I think it might be like something like 98.5% accurate, and the Bible has the most copies of any. So if there was errors in any one of those, they'd be just like, oh, see, well, these don't line up. But they actually all line up within like 98% or something like that. And of the discrepancies, the majority are spelling, grammatical errors, and none of these are have theological repercussions. And the copies that we have today are all online. So you can actually look up the most ancient document, and you can actually look for yourself. So the beauty of the internet. And if there are discrepancies, you'll read in your Bible, and you'll be reading along, and you'll see a little A or B or C or D, and then you'll go, oh, what's that? And you look at the bottom, and you're like, oh, some manuscripts say this, some manuscripts say this, or some manuscripts don't have this part, or some manuscripts have added this part. So the Bible's like full disclosure. It's like, yeah, we do have some discrepancies. We're just telling you what they are. So, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, I have a very odd collection of books at home.
Okay.
And I have a Bible that I acquired that's from like 1867.
Okay.
And it is white and it is thick and
Beautiful.
it's got pictures in it and it's really cool.
Work of art, eh?
But reminds me of this because it's very different literature and it's very different how everything's laid out. The paper's different, everything.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Cool. So also just people will say, oh, the Bible's been corrupted and Bible's not accurate and yada, yada, yada. Letter C, we bring up the idea of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So God put the Bible in a time capsule, brought it up to about 200 years before Jesus, and just said, we're just going to put these in a cave for about 2,000 years, 2,100 years. We'll just put them in there. And then we're going to go through all of history, and then people are going to say, oh, they've changed the Bible over these last 2,000 years, 2,100 years. And then again, through archaeology, they're like, oh, we have 800 to 900 documents that are actually the actual like papyrus that people wrote on that were copying of the Bible. And they go, I wonder if these from 2,100 years are anything like these. And when they put them side by side, they were exactly the same. The most notable was Isaiah, which has 66 verses, and those just go like a key in a lock.
You know what's interesting here too, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947.
Mm-hmm.
Israel was, their nation was founded in 1948.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Very similar timeline. Yeah. Okay. And then here's the big one. If you don't remember anything else, you just got to read the Quran, because the Quran's like, yeah, believe the Jewish Bible, and believe, they call it the Injil, the gospel, right? Believe the Gospels. Now they will say, well, it doesn't say all Paul's writings, because Paul's writings are garbage. We do believe in what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote, because that's the gospel. But it's like, well, if you believe that, and then you believe that Jesus converted Saul, you're kind of like, throw me a bone here. But the Quran actually endorses the reliability of both the Old and New Testament. Okay, so good review. Jesus is not God. Yeah, he is. The Bible's not accurate. You know what? Yeah, it is. And then the third one that they're going to come at you with, and this might actually be the first one that they come at you with, is the Trinity is not mentioned in the Bible. So I think this was the one where most people's eyes were glazing over. I think we lost Phil on this night. I was like, Trinity, 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 and Phil's like thinking, are the Packers going to win this week? Or... and I don't blame him. I felt like I was back in Bible college, except I would have been sitting there and not here. So kind of crazy. Anyways, the Trinity is not mentioned in the Bible. So you hear this, and again, the Word is not mentioned in the Bible, but here are a few examples when the Trinity is exemplified. Number one is Jesus' baptism, and Matthew 3:16. So you remember Jesus' baptism, goes into the water, comes up out of the water, dove comes down, this Holy Spirit, and there's this voice from heaven, "This is my beloved Son, whom I'm well pleased." So you got God in the water, God in the sky, God, voice from heaven. Introduction to John, the Word became flesh. So again, you can read that on your own time, but there's many, or not many, but there's two separate people in that account of creation, right? The Word was with God, but the Word wasn't God. Anyways, I'm getting myself into trouble. The Word was God. The Word was with the Word was with God. So the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So the Word was with God, but then the Word became flesh, incarnation. So again, they will have a hard time with that. I'll edit that other part out where the Word was not God. Great Commission, go there into all the world and preach the good news to all nations, baptizing them in the name of the
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Who's saying that? Jesus? Right? That's pretty good evidence. Jesus is mentioning the Trinity right there. Philippians 2:1 talks about Jesus coming out of heaven. And it's called the Great Dissension. It's actually prophesied in Isaiah 45, so Jesus is the fulfillment of that. But it talks about God coming down to earth, so that part too. And then there's Isaiah 45 and Hebrews 1:3. Actually, can somebody read Hebrews 1:1-3? I hope it's the right scripture. I thought when I was doing this, I thought, dang, that's pretty powerful. Hebrews 1:1-3. Nice and slow.
Hebrews 1:1-3.
Faster than that.
In the past,
Oh,
Thank you.
wow, your voice changed.
God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven.
Okay, so there you got, he's created the world, he provided a way for salvation. Now he's sitting beside himself? What? No, he's sitting beside the Father, right? So it doesn't prove the three, but it proves the two. It proves this kind of multi-dimensional Godhead, right? Okay, so again, Jesus is God. We talked about this earlier. He accepts worship. So if you're God, you accept worship because you're God, right? If somebody came up to me and were like, Carter, you're like, "You're such a great teacher, man. I worship you, Pastor Rob. I'm not worthy." I'm just like, man, again, like Deshaun, I'm just a dude. I'm just a guy trying to figure it out, right? Stop worshiping me. So we have a couple of cases here where it says, I mean, we have all the cases above where Jesus receives worship, but then there are these two places where John starts to worship the angel in Revelation 22, right? This is when, hey, behold, I'm going to make everything new and all that stuff. And the angel's like, oh, I worship you, angel. And he's like, stop worshiping me. I'm an angel. I'm not worthy of worship, right? Making the distinction. And then Peter also, we're going to come up to this in a couple weeks, in Acts 10, in Cornelius' house, and that whole story, they're trying to worship Peter, and he goes, I'm just a dude, man. Like, I'm just a messenger. So don't worship me, okay? And then the Father, so here we got the Father is God, Jesus is God, Spirit is God. So Father sends the Son, Father gives the Spirit in John 14. It's the Father's will that's accomplished in John 15. The Father dwells in heaven, John 14. The Holy Spirit is God, so Acts 5, 3, and 4. When Ananias and Sapphira lied to the Holy Spirit, they lied to God and died. That's pretty judgmental of the Holy Spirit, but he has power to kill people. So the Spirit, I think this might be Ephesians as well, but the Spirit is the one that marks believers for salvation. All right? The Spirit indwells believers. The Spirit regenerates believers. The Spirit points people to Jesus. Again, more Trinity stuff. And the Spirit is the one that convicts us of our sin. So again, the role, all of those things are God things, and that's what the Spirit does. And did I do Jesus? Yeah, I did Jesus earlier. Yeah, Jesus is God. Okay. So that's all great. That's us in the 21st century. What about the people who were right close to Jesus? What about the people in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century? What in the world did they believe? And so we see that the Apostles' Creed in the 2nd century, I believe in God the Father, I believe in Christ the Son, I believe in the Holy Spirit, right? That's all written out 2nd century. So they're like, we better write this down. We don't understand it just yet, but we got to write this down. And then the Nicene Creed, they kind of double back and kind of flesh it out. That's the 4th century. So again, this is where they came to the conclusion that we don't really understand it, but we know that the Father, Son, and Spirit are all of the same essence. That's the word they use. They're of the same essence. They are three, distinct, but also they're the one God that we serve and worship. Okay, so when somebody from the Islamic faith is going to challenge you on that, here's something that you can do when they say the Trinity is not in the Bible. You say, oh, do you believe in the Tawheed, asserting the oneness of God? Of course. Every good Muslim will believe in the Tawheed. Do you know that word's not in the Quran? Tawheed? How can you believe in it if the word is not in the Quran? And I got the whole thing there too. Also, the Shahada is not in the Quran, but the Shahada is the way that a Muslim person would come to faith in Allah. So, but those things are not in the Quran. So, these are basic tenets of your faith, but they're not in there. The Trinity, the word is not in there by name, but it's in there by all the definitions we just gave. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Right? They're believing in these things, the Tawheed and the Shahada, but those aren't in the Quran. We believe in the Trinity. It's not in the Bible. So again, you just kind of, level the playing field. And then the next sticking point is to be able to say to them, do you believe the Quran is created or uncreated? It's uncreated. It is the actual speech of Allah, but it's uncreated. And you're like, oh, so is it Allah? No, it's not Allah. Okay, so Allah's God, but if it's uncreated, then who created it? Well, it's uncreated. Okay, well then do you have two gods? Because it sounds to me like you have an uncreated Allah, but then also an uncreated book called the Quran. So help me understand, do you have two gods or do you believe in the Tawheed? Which is also not in the Quran. You know what I mean? And so you can just kind of back,
Question with a question.
Question with a question. We're getting to that. We get into that.
No, like in dealing with that, right?
Absolutely.
Good approach.
You guys follow me on that? Okay.
Also the background, by the way, I think it was.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my computer is getting very sleepy. I gave some, I did give this some chocolate, so maybe it's crashing. I don't know. What?
Round two.
Round two. There we go. It sounds like that thing has calmed down a little bit. Maybe not.
Still doesn't.
Maybe we're just used to it.
You're loud.
Okay, and the last one here, everybody say last one?
Last one.
Okay, we're excited. So, just in general, it's kind of a hard concept, but is it really? Is it really a hard concept? Because the reality of Trinities are all around us. This idea of the transcendence of God. And I love this argument because it makes more sense to me. When people say, well, God, if God is one, then he can't be three. It just can't happen. It's like, well, no. If God is God, he can do whatever he wants. And you know what? I would rather believe in a God that can do whatever he wants rather than believe in a God that is limited to math. Right?
Great. I love
Right?
that. Absolutely.
So, and there's three parts to significant things. Science has the rule of threes. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God, the word there, and Carter, you mentioned the word I am. So that I didn't know. This one I do know is the word Elohim, which is a plural form of the word God. So in the first verse of the Bible, you see the Trinity, or at least multiple gods, yet in a singular form as well. So you're kind of like, you're faced with it 4 words into the book, right? So in the beginning, God created. Deuteronomy, so Islam has the Shahada. In Israel, they have the Shema, which is this verse. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Do you see it right there in that? Not only do they use the word Elohim, which again is the plural form, but why does this guy stutter? Whoever, it was, I guess, Moses that wrote this, he did have a stutter, so maybe it was that. But hear, O Israel, say it with me, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Like it's right there. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Why are you saying it so many times, man? Like just say, God is one. Didn't say it. He said, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So, and then just all around us. 3 elements in the universe, time, space, matter, dimensions, height, length, width, divisions of time, past, present, future, states or elements, solid, liquid, gas, parts of an atom, protons, neutrons, electrons, parts of man, soul, spirit, body. This is the whole math thing again. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. When I should have put 1 extra times in there. Math wasn't my strong suit. And then 1 divided by 1 divided by 1, still 1. As opposed to what we'd be challenged with, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So then you have 3 gods. Well, let's go times tables and division as opposed to, addition and subtraction. Okay, you with me?
Did you apply kindness?
I did. I did not, but I do see some brackets there. Or as we learned a couple weeks ago, they're parentheses. They're parentheses, not brackets. Okay, questions, comments, and we're moving on. What do we got? What's hitting you? Anything striking? Now, this is all review, so you should all be like right brushed up on that.
No, I like it. It's great.
Sean, what do you got? What are your thoughts? Okay, pretty good. Scale of 1 to 10? 6.5?
8.
Okay, wow. I never got an 8.
That was my response. I'm sorry.
I never got an 8 in my life. Okay. Anyone else? Henry?
Well, I don't know, I was just thinking when we were talking about Trinity, whatever, it just kind of dawned on me that 3 is kind of like completeness. Okay? There's other meanings for it, 3, but it's like a really huge number
Okay.
in the scriptures.
Yeah.
Because they're using it for everything.
Right.
Okay?
Very symbolic.
3 days, okay.
Yeah.
Being in hell.
Sure.
Days.
Yeah.
There, everything seems to be in 3 days, okay? It's like it all just goes around in a circle.
Yep.
Okay, from one to the other, so the Trinity is like complete.
Okay.
It's whole. Okay, 1, 3, and 1.
Right.
Whole. So
Yeah.
I just started, it's like all of a sudden I'm reading the scriptures and it seems like everything is in 3s. Like
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Well, and in the Bible, numerology is a huge thing. And again, I wouldn't camp my entire argument on this. Like I would go like in order. that we went through. This would be the last one, but you could kind of just go like, it actually kind of fits with just the natural course of the universe. Like the order of things fits, you know? So, I mean, when we're talking about elements, dimensions, divisions of time, states and elements, parts of an atom, those aren't small things. Those are the building blocks of, you know, right? So anyways, the argument can kind of break down, but it's just a little bit of a more anecdotal way to kind of discover it or explore it. Aubrey, questions?
Don't have much to say. We'll talk about it.
Okay. All right, we will move on. Okay, so here's the fun part of the night. If you guys want to do, and then so if we want to just do a quick review of the challenges that you would give to Islam, number one, and this what you would have to do with all sensitivity, is you would ask a question: do you really know the life of Muhammad based on your traditional documentation? Do you really know who he was and what he did and how he acted? Because his life was deplorable. And all of that, isn't anyone outside of Islam saying he was a bad guy? And now they're all saying, no, he was a good guy. No, all of their books saying this guy was a killer, and on and on and on. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Also, we talked about the violence inherent in the ideology of Islam. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I know I showed a number of videos because I just wanted to, well, actually, no, it was the female one. But I found one, and this is a famous guy, Mohammed Niqab, I think his name is. He's in England. Have you watched any of his videos, Sean? Okay. Very outspoken, very demonstrative, very aggressive, great debater, but in his debates, he'll intimidate and he'll browbeat and all those things. But there was 3 different videos they strung together, and he was just like, yeah, Islam is a dominating ideology, and our goal is to take over the world by force, you know. And so I wanted to show that that ship has sailed. However, the violence inherent in the ideology, and then also the subjugation of women and their rights. And so we talked about that last week. That's why nobody's here tonight. Except the men. Yes. And the awesome women that are with us. You know, but hey, you know, I came across this week. Do you know in the Gospels, do you know when Jesus rose from the dead, who went there first?
Woman. You never use a woman in history.
Never. What does Islam say, right? One guy's testimony is worth two women, right? We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But here you have all of the gospel accounts. They have Mary and I think it's 2 Marys, and they're the ones that go to the tomb. And they're the ones that are declaring Jesus rose from the dead. Like, get out of here, woman, you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing from nothing. You know, if they were in the 30s. But
I think that's what they sound like for sure.
well, but the Bible, like, elevates
So good.
women. Jesus always elevated women. So, anyways.
I think that's one of like the best proofs, because like 2,000 years ago, if you were trying to prove a lie, you wouldn't use women to back up your lie.
Exactly.
They did.
Yeah, 100%. Beautiful.
So glad I learned that. Thank you.
Okay.
For sure.
So where we're going to go next is I'm taking all this. I read the book. You may have heard Charles Hermelink refer to this. It was a book called Tactics, subtitled A Game Plan for Discussing Your Christian Convictions by a guy named Greg Koukl. Greg Koukl is a U.S. guy, has his own podcast, radio program, blah, blah, blah. And all of what is said here, I'm basically just taking from him. Because really what I want to do is go, okay, now what? So we have a little bit of head knowledge, put us, in the position where we're actually talking to somebody. Now what do we say, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of strategy, but this is all his stuff. I've taken his book and I'm just going to condense it down to these little Cole's notes for us, okay? So number 1, he comes out of the gate. This is kind of like what we did at the beginning of our session, where we read all of those scriptures. And I love this because he kind of takes the same tack that we took. He uses Colossians 4, 5, and 6. And he says, be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. So you can put anybody in that label as outsiders. That can just be a regular non-believer. But this is be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. let your conversation, so if you're talking about faith with somebody of Islam or somebody who's at work and they just hate God, this applies. Let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. So his condension of that verse for our marching orders is be smart, be nice, be tactical. Be smart, be nice, be tactical. Too often Christians get elevated and they're like, how dare you say that the King James Version is not God's word, like, right? And we'll get offended by something and then we just come back full force. Well, remember, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. It's a spiritual thing. And Satan would love more than anything to get us all riled up and to lash out. So this is a great practical step. Be smart, be nice, and tactical. So here is his mindset as he moves in. He says, think like a gardener, not a harvester. Think like a gardener, not a harvester. So again, Carter Aubrey, I don't know what your faith background is. When I was a kid, they used to tell me in youth group, go out there, preach the gospel, save souls, make sure people say the sinner's prayer, like force them if you have to, like get those converts, baby, bring those people to church. Like it was like notches on our belt if we won a soul to Jesus.
Come on, turn or burn.
Turn or burn, baby. So we were sent out as harvesters. Let's go reap the field. And he's like, you know what? Let's dial that back a little bit. Let's leave the God-saving business to God. And let's just us be nice, be smart, and be tactical. And so he says, think like a gardener, not like a harvester. So really you're just going out and you're kind of, oh, what can I do? I'll pull a weed here. Oh, this needs to be watered, right? Different, right? All together. Right? You got the concept? He says, think like a detective and not like an expert. Right? So you're in a conversation, you're like, oh, help me understand. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wonder where that leads. Oh, you know what we should do is we should do a study on that. Like we should figure this out. Detective, right? As opposed to an expert where it's like, well, my Bible says that God, and that's where I think that's where we're kind of taught that we should be confident in our faith. We should know the Bible like our back of our hand, and we should just ram it down people's throats. We should be the authority, the expert. And he's like, no, be more inquisitive. Be more like, hey, let's figure something out together. Okay? First objective is to build relationship. And I love this. Building your relationship using confidence and by being inquisitive. So again, based on all those things that we just read about who Jesus is, how reliable our Bible is, the Trinity, all those things, we can be confident. And we can just be like, no, I'm sure of my position. Now let's enter into a dialogue here. But again, in a smart, nice, and tactical way. And then the second objective, and again, I love this too, is just put a stone in the other person's shoe. So you know how when you're on a hike and you have a stone in your shoe and you're just like, oh my God, this is driving me crazy. I gotta stop and pull this stone out of my shoe.
You want to put the stone in their shoe.
You want to put the stone in their shoe so that they're just like, did he just tell me that I should look into the character of Muhammad?
I get it.
Oh, ever since I was born, I was told Muhammad was the perfect example to all humankind. What did he mean by that? But you just asked a question. You put a stone in their shoe. And so they're walking along through their life. Might be 10 years later. Stone's still there. They're like, I'm going to look that up. That's the objective.
So, prepare the soil and plant the seed.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, here's one. Columbo. I got my Columbo people, right? And then I have my non-Columbo. Do you know who Columbo is?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so impressed. Do you know who Columbo is? Okay. So we're going to go here in a second. So here's Columbo. I'll show you Columbo. So this is it 70s or 60s?
70s, I think.
Yeah, it was 70s.
Okay, so this is a famous actor. His name is Peter Falk. And he is a detective, a police detective. And his character was just this bumbling fool. He would just walk into places like, hey, what's going on? He had this was it New York accent? I guess it was kind of New York, Italian maybe?
Yeah,
Sorry, what's his name again?
Columbo.
Columbo, right? Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, he always came with this trench coat, which was like, yeah, trench coat's a little creepy. And
That was a style.
oh, was it the style? Okay, but it was always rumpled, and he had one collar up, one collar down. His hair was always a mess. And if there's anything more obnoxious than smoking a cigar, I don't know what it is. But he would always show up like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, let me ask you a question here." You know, and I'm doing a very terrible impression of Columbo. But that's him. And the thing is, he was such a ruse, because you're like, there is no way this bumbling moron can actually figure out a crime. So all the people who actually committed the crime would just be like, "Oh, I'll answer any of your questions," because they underestimated exactly how smart this guy was. Because he didn't look smart. He didn't look smart at all, but he duped them. And then he basically, the way Columbo worked was he always got them almost to confess, because he would just ask questions. "Well, I wonder how that happened." And well, you see here, it was just this. And then he would just look at them, and there would be the gotcha moment, right? "I gotcha. I know how you put the paper in the typewriter. I know that you typed the letter, which means you murdered the person." Right? So anyways, I got a little, I tried to download some Columbo just for kicks. But I got this reel of a guy who's doing an impersonation of Columbo, which is what we're going to do, is impersonations of Columbo. All right, here. So this is Greg Kokel, and he's saying, this is the way that we should do approach. All right.
So basically, when the chicken crossed the road to get to the other side, you said you were just on your porch when it got smoked by a bus. You were just sitting here. Okay, interesting. You're the only witness. Okay, and you too. Right, the both of you were sitting here. Sorry, I can't see. Yeah, oh, now I see you. So, okay, great. Okay, I'm not gonna take up any more of your time. Thank you for your time. Okay, bye-bye. Okay.
Here's the line. Here's the line.
You know, I just got one more thing before I go. Where do chickens come from? That's what I want to know. There's an egg, there's a chicken. But where did that chicken come from? But where did that egg come from? It's been scrambling my brains all day. Like scrambled eggs.
Isn't that good? Yeah.
We'll have to see the original, but I like
Yeah,
it.
oh yeah, you see the original, it's like classic 1970s television. Right, but you see where he's like, "Oh, just one more thing, you know what, I'm curious about this." And he would always kind of scratch his brow, and he'd just be like, he would just be mesmerized, and they'd all be like, "Dude, you are so stupid." And then they would just start offering all this information. And so Greg Kokel is saying, we can take a page out of Columbo's book by just being a detective and actually playing possum a little bit and just saying, "Oh, tell me more about that. Oh, you know, like Trinity's not in the Bible? Oh, okay. Like, how do you know that? You know, what made you come to that conclusion?" And you're like, "Well, we've been told that." "Oh, you've been told that. Okay, who told you that? Based on what? Like, what was the information?" Right? And so instead of going, "Well, yes, the Trinity is in the Bible because Jesus was baptized one time," and and then you just get all rattled, and then it's flesh on flesh and not letting the Spirit do the work. So the questions here that Greg Kokel says is, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Or, and then if that goes somewhere, you go, "Okay, and what do you mean by that?" Right? So, Jesus isn't God. "Oh, what do you mean?" And also he adds the thing like, Really? Like, you're stupefied. You're like, "I've heard Jesus is God all my life." Really? What do you mean by that? Where do you get that kind of information? And they're just like, "Well, everybody knows that." It's like, really? Who's everybody?
So
Right?
you do it 3 times too.
Yeah, you just keep peppering them with questions. You just act like Columbo, right? You know what you know, but really, again, you're not trying to convince them. You're not trying to win them. You're just trying to put a stone in their shoe. So you're like, "Really? Never heard that before. This is all new to me." You're just like, do you have any proof on that? Like, is there anything written down? What we should do is we should look this up together. Right? You see how that just leads, this is genius approach. So his next piece is, he says, what you try to do is you try to shift the burden of proof. Because what will happen, and this could be with anybody, they will try to put the burden of proof on you. So you prove to me that God is a Trinity. You prove to me that Jesus said he was God. You prove to me that, any of these things that we said. And what you do with these questions is you shift the burden of proof. Because you ask them, "Well, where'd you get this information? What do you mean by that? Like, what are you talking about?" And then when they do that, they actually will say, well, everybody knows this. Oh, well, wait a second, you just made a claim. Who's everybody?
Yeah.
Like,
Just name them.
yeah, name one. Yeah, right? And you're just like, and they'll be stupefied, but then they'll be rattled, and then you just keep asking them a question. But again, you're not trying to win, you're just trying to build a relationship and be a detective and go down the road. Because you know that if we go down the road and we start digging, we're actually going to find the truth. What was it Johnny Cash said? Anybody who's looking for the truth will find it eventually. I might misquote Johnny Cash. Oh, that might not be good.
Johnny Cash
Anyway,
said that?
what?
Johnny Cash said that?
Uh-huh.
Fell into a burden range.
What? Anyways, shift the burden of proof. The responsibility lies with the person who makes the claim. So if you make the claim and you say, no, the Trinity is in the Bible, they go, okay, well, prove it. Burden of proof is now on you. So actually don't say that. Just keep asking questions. You want to put a rock in their shoe. So when they make a claim, you say, really? How did you come to that conclusion? Muhammad is a great example of all time. Really? How did you come to that conclusion? Like, seriously? Oh, the Quran is the uncreated speech of Allah. Really? What made you come to that conclusion? Like, help me understand. What's your proof? They made a claim. Now you just put it back on them. Well, of course, we know that the Quran is perfect in every way. Really? Like, I've heard that there's, well, maybe that's more of a claim, but you just, again, right? You're with me on that. Where did you get that idea? Show me what you're talking about. And if they ask about the Bible, what verse are you talking about? Okay? Does that feel about right? I don't know if Pierre Polyev had this training. You guys know who Pierre Polyev is?
Yeah,
What?
He's the conservative leader for,
Canada.
Oh,
And you're next, Prime. No,
No, I-
just a joke. Pierre Polyev has a famous interview. Have you seen this interview? Where he's eating an apple and there's a reporter
yeah.
that comes up to him. And basically what we just talked about is exactly what he does. So here's a great example.
I've seen
Yeah.
this video. It's very funny.
what's the name again?
Up here,
Where's my cursor?
yeah, he's the current leader of the Canadian
Yeah,
Progressive
that's
Conservative.
right.
All right.
I recognize it now.
Ready?
In terms of your sort of strategy currently, you're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
Well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess. I mean,
What do you mean by that?
certainly you tap very strong ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Left wing, this and that, right wing. I mean, it's that type of ideological stuff.
I never really talk about left
But
or right.
anyways, a lot
I
of
don't
people.
really believe in that.
Okay. A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Which people would say that?
But
What are you
also-
talking about? What page? What page? Can you give me
Okay.
the page? Give me the page. You keep saying
In terms of turning things quite dramatically in terms of Trudeau and the left wing and all of this, why should Canadians trust you with their vote?
common sense.
I like it.
Right? Like he just used this whole tactic. He's just like, okay, well, I'm not going to answer your question. I'm just going to keep on peppering you with questions. If you notice Jesus' speech in all of the Gospels, when people talk to him, I think except for 2 exchanges, he always answers a question with a question.
Oh, women always do that?
I'm real good.
Vince, remember last week? Remember what happened? Anyways. Okay, so your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts. Let's go around.
It's a lot of information. It's enlightening in many ways and makes me want to learn a lot more.
Okay?
Still curious about a lot of stuff that I don't understand, but that's good.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
not intimidating. It's like it's inspiring.
an exploration. And isn't curiosity just a wonderful thing? And isn't it great for us to be allowed to be curious? One of the things that we will note, and we have noted, is that any cult is not allowed to be curious. So when you're pressing on some of these things, the Quran, Muhammad, the life of Muhammad, some of these other things, those are no-fly zones. You like most Muslims, again, this is a lot from Charles, but he's like, you can't talk about that stuff. That is off the table. But with Christianity, it's like, it's all there. Any mistakes, they're noted, like in the Bible, right? They're noted. And so, yeah, perfect. Sean, what are your thoughts thoughts? You're a pretty deep thinker.
Something I like that Carter actually told me is when you ask a Muslim about Muhammad's relationship with Aisha,
Mm.
he married a 6-year-old.
Yep.
It was normal at the time. But what Carter actually told me is if you like read the Quran, you see that Umar came to Ali to see if he could marry his 9-year-old daughter. Ali said, no, she's too young.
Mm.
So a 9-year-old's too young to marry. And
Just to be clear, I don't think it was in the Quran. But it was said that it was in, yeah, it was in Hadith. It was in a separate, like, historical account where it was around the same time.
Okay.
And it basically was a different interaction between two different individuals.
Right.
And so one of these individuals wanted to marry the person's daughter, and she was
Yeah.
11. And that person, I think it was Umar, who said, no, she's too young
Mhm.
because she's 11.
Right.
And my point was telling him that was that the argument that it was okay for the time for a 6-year-old to get married
Right.
is false, because there were people at the time who were in this area, in this region at this time, who
Yep.
thought it was completely wrong for an 11-year-old to get married.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, again, that's a little bit more of a debate and exchange,
Mhm.
but again, you could lead there. Oh, well, what, you know, is there anything else in the Quran? Are there any other examples? Or, you know, what do they call those things that happen first? Like in court?
Precedent.
Precedents, thank you.
Precedent.
Precedents for something like this. Because again, another one is the idea about, oh, if anybody, and we talked about this last week, if any man wants to have a wife, he should have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, you know, but no more than 4, but also I have 7, you know, like, right? So there's a lot of wiggle room there, but it would take questions to do that, right? Because again, you want to use this tactic. But beautiful, yeah, that's great. Aubrey, any insights, thoughts, questions?
I don't have much to say. I'm not too educated on Muslim
Okay.
or Islam, sorry, all that stuff.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. I can kind of see what you're saying.
Okay.
My basic understanding of both Islam and Christianity. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think both sides have their opposing views on different situations. And yeah, but I just like extending my knowledge on both topics.
Okay.
Not what's it called, Islam. I don't care for that. Like I just like to understand it, you know, not because I like it. But
I know what you mean. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, right? We're all here because we're trying to kind of gain an understanding,
yes.
gain some perspective. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that you're here. I think when I first met you, you were about this tall,
Really?
and now you're like,
That's what everyone says.
I know, it's crazy. So, anyways, I'm glad you're here tonight.
Awesome.
Carter, obviously you're a wealth of knowledge, so hit us. What's coming out for you tonight?
Well, I thought it was very interesting when you started talking about the detective relationship and thinking like a detective and not an expert, or I guess engaging like a detective and not an
Yeah.
expert. Because I've been reading this book lately by Adam Grant called Think Smart, I think is the name.
Think again.
Think Again, yes.
Yeah.
That's the book. And it talks all about, in the first chapter, about how we need to start thinking like a scientist. It's because it said how normal people, how they interact is they preach, they politic, and they prosecute.
Right.
But-
Beautiful.
Cool. And I think that this is very similar to that, where the expert will try and say, no, I know what's right, I know what's wrong.
100%.
Same with the preacher and the
Yep.
politician.
Yep.
And the scientist says, no, we should ask questions. We should try to understand each
Right.
other, right? Instead
Right.
of trying to argue our side. We should
Mhm.
say, okay, well, what do you think?
Right. Okay. So this is an important piece that you brought up because it shows the different worldviews of the Western kind of Christian worldview and the Middle Eastern worldview. So I might butcher this a little bit, but there's this thing that happened called the Enlightenment, right? Which was Descartes in the 1800s, and he said, I think, therefore I am. It was this idea that you could actually think about your thoughts and all that stuff. So if we backtrack, there was a guy named Galileo, there was a guy named Copernicus, there was a guy named Newton. Newton discovered gravity. The idea for them was they looked at the world around them and they were like, you know what, it is a little bit chaotic, but there's also this incredible order. And if there's an order, it means if we scientifically do what you're asking, we approach this like a scientist, we will actually discover who God is. And so those are the original drive for all those scientists was kind of like, well, God has left us all these breadcrumbs, orbits of the sun and all these things, astronomy, all those things. And so they're like, wow, God has left us this ability. If we're curious enough, if we ask enough questions, we will deduce some things. And the Western culture has been built on that premise of science. So now it's gone a little bit too far at this point, because now we trust in science way more than we trust in God. So we've come from this idea where we thought would drive us to God, where it's kind of driving us away from God. However, again, I'm generalizing here, but I think that in the ideological world of an Islamic person, they will not have that worldview. Curiosity is not okay. This is what we believe, you do it, and you don't rock the boat. Right? So I think that's a brilliant thing that you brought up, and I think it's also brilliant to bring up and just go, well, that's why it takes a detective to go, hey, well, let's put a stone in your shoe and get your mind. Because I've seen so many videos, and you guys have probably seen so many videos of people who were brought up Islamic. We mentioned Nabil Qureshi at the beginning of the study, and he was one who all of a sudden did get curious, and then he started to dig through, and he went to his dad, and he's like, Dad, what about this, and what about this? Oh, we can't understand. And he kind of just shut it all down. But the more he dug into it, and the more David Wood helped him through relationship, 2-3 years of relationship, he uncovered the truth. So, anyways, that's a great point.